So, hello everyone. I am so actually delighted and excited to introduce many of you. Many of you may know Greg already, but many of you may not. So, I'm particularly excited to introduce those of you who don't to Greg Williams, right? And I'm gonna let Greg tell you more about his reason for doing the kind of incredible work that he does. But I will tell you this: Greg is a documentary filmmaker, right? An award-winning documentary filmmaker who's made such films as The Anonymous People and Generation Found. He was one of the executive producers of a big rally, really a groundbreaking rally that happened in 2015, right? A little previous to the pandemic. It was called United to Face Addiction, and it was on the National Mall, and it was incredible and called so much attention to the problem of addiction. And I particularly wanted to invite Greg into this conversation about healing addiction and eating disorders at the Yoga and Recovery Symposium because I know his work and I know his passion and I know where it's rooted, right? And I also just thought it was very important to hear this voice in the conversations that we'll be having over the weekend. So, Greg, thank you. Thank you for saying
Thank you.
yes to come do this keynote. And so I just thought maybe if you might tell the folks why it is that you've chosen to do the work that you do in the world.
Well, it's humbling. Thank you, Nikki. It's awesome, and I'm really excited to share space with you and with the community that you're bringing together for this conference. It's always been a community that I've admired in terms of their holistic view of the person, and sometimes in the recovery space, um, we don't see that in certain recovery circles, and so that's kind of my story. Is I'm a person in long-term recovery. July 15th, a day that you and I know well, 2001. And so just celebrated 21 years in sustained recovery. And for me, that's given me an ability to, not only be a father and a son and a person in my community, but it's also given me the ability to file taxes and engage on other issues as part of a democracy, and some of those civic engagement parts of my life that early on as a person in recovery, I didn't really understand if I could connect that part of my life, or if I wanted to be engaged as in the civic process, if I was able to engage, from a perspective of recovery, because of things that had been told to me about anonymity, or things that had been told to me about being ashamed of my status as a person in recovery, and the language that we had used. And so, the underlying reason for film is I had a passion, even before I started using drugs and alcohol for this in high school. And I got away from it a little in my active addiction, but I, quickly, went back to it in college and studied kind of documentary film and studied media production. My first job out of college was in a production company. And so I kind of started my whole career in the video production space. Um, and at the same time, I was kind of exploring these issues of why don't our insurance cards work? Why are my friends getting locked up? Why am I going to all these wakes? And the system didn't respond to them, in that way. And why am I ashamed? I wasn't really asking myself this. I didn't know to ask myself this question, but why am I ashamed when my colleagues at work are going out to beers on a Thursday night, why am I ashamed to like, join them because I don't want to tell them about my status, right? And so all of those things kind of were early on in my recovery and in that journey, and I didn't reconcile a lot of those things in my own life until I met some people about 3 or 4 years into my recovery who introduced me to the new recovery advocacy movement and some of the things that people were doing in a perspective to help one-to-many community members. They were using their voice and their platforms in various ways to impact change. And so, long story short, my journey, I went to a training. They taught me how to talk about my recovery status as a person in recovery. It was hosted by Faces and Voices of Recovery, and I met people there that were just, they were inspiring to me, and I thought they were on the front end of a monumental cultural shift around how we deal with addiction and how we think about addiction and recovery and how we think about people that suffer from this, or families and what have you. And so I became passionate to point a camera at some of those folks and sit down with them. And it was the education of a lifetime, to sit down with individuals across the recovery space and kind of ask them why. Why do they do what they do? Why are they advocating at the federal policy level? Why are they doing what they're doing in local communities? And that became the Anonymous People. And I never kind of intended to make a career or make 3 now we're releasing the 3rd documentary, and I'm excited to share that with your community. But so anyways, that kind of started the journey, and that's the beginning. But it's been a fun ride since that time.
I love it. I love it. And, Anonymous People in particular is a film that I continue to recommend for its educational value. It's just so poignant to show how reducing shame and reducing all of these things can support sustainable recovery, right? Which is at a whole what this conference is really all about. How can we build platforms for sustainable recovery, and have that be available at all access levels so that it's accessible for all, right? And so just I don't want to give away too much, and just inviting people in. I want people to meet you and invite them in so that they can see the presentation that you bring. I'm wondering if you can just tell us a bit about tipping the pain scale, and just talk to us a little bit about what the impetus was for that film.
Yeah, well, thank you. It's throughout my life in the film space, I've had the privilege and honor to partner with a guy named Jeff Riley, and Jeff is one of the most talented director editors of documentary film, and he's done 30 for 30s with LeBron James and Randy Moss, and he dabbles in that world, but he's got a passion for making these social justice indie films with me, and I've been blessed to partner with him on each one. And so he's been able to, like, he edited Anonymous People and directed Generation Found and edited that. And so before the pandemic set in, we were approached by the executive producer, Tim Grant of Tipping the Pain Scale, and he really wanted to make a film kind of that speaks to this moment, speaks to the change that is needed culturally around shame and stigma, and also from a perspective of community change agents. And so we set out on a journey to follow people at different layers of society. We have some folks in the film. We have one NFL star, Darren Waller from the Oakland Raiders. We have the Secretary of Labor now, Marty Walsh, who's a person in recovery. But we also have community outreach individuals like Roz Picardo and Officer De La Rosa from Boston, and and early intervention, prevention minded folks like Joseph Green, who carries the film as a spoken word artist, and Lauren Davis, who's doing incredible work in the state legislature of Washington in a really bipartisan state. And so we kind of looked at policy, on the ground practice, cultural influence. And so really what our framing was, our communities are in so much pain with addiction. We hear about the overdose numbers all the time. We hear about all the problems related to addiction, and at what point are our communities had enough pain where we're ready to do something different, right? I think so many of the things that policymakers do, or government agencies fund, or insurance companies try to do, is so incremental given the scale and magnitude of what is facing us, that it's like,
Exactly.
at what point have we had enough pain that doing the same thing over and expecting the same different results is not what we need to do. This is not an incremental shift that we need. And so we really wanted to focus in on some voices and some people that could kind of drive that perspective home. And I think whether it's the street outreach stuff, or reimagining law enforcement's approach to this issue, or entire federal enforcement of parity and things like that. So that's kind of the genesis of tipping the pain scale, and it really it kind of uses that as a frame to say we got to look at emotional pain, we got to look at trauma, we need to look at underlying causes and conditions, and we need to look at community pain, and this is broader than the individual, and what are the systems that we have that are causing that pain, and how do we start going upstream and attacking the issue early. So the feature film, I'm so excited to share segments with the audience during the upcoming keynote, and we'll talk about the different characters in the segments. It's just coming out now, so it's a brand new film. It took a little while for us through COVID and the pandemic to finish it. We shot a bunch of it before the pandemic, and then had to wait till it was safe to find paths to shoot video 21 and things like that. So we got a little delayed, but we're really excited to roll it out during Recovery Month, and excited to share it with the community.
I'm really excited for you to share this with the community. It is exactly what our hope is, that this conference is all about. It's approaching this problem from every angle. It's approaching it from all the different directions, and this film gives voice to that. And I'm really, really, really grateful. That's one of the things, like, the healthcare system and policymakers and all that. Many times those are really long-term things, right? Right? It's almost a drip by drip by drip. But when we get community involved, and we do this from not just the top down, but from the bottom up and from the sides, maybe, just maybe, the hope is that there will be sustainable recovery for all. Right, right, right. So, Greg, I want to thank you again, and I cannot wait for this community to get the previews into to tipping the scale, and can't wait till everyone can go out and see it. I've had the opportunity to see it, and it really is profound. The only thing I was a little sad about is I wasn't able to get Darren Waller as my fantasy football TE, right? Which broke my heart.
It hurts your team too. He just had a monster.
Oh,
He just had a monster week one. He signed the best. This is like, talk about a recovery journey. So the guy just he just signed a $51 million contract. But what happened was, so his story, I'll give the cliff notes to you right now. He got expelled from the NFL because of his active addiction. He had to go to treatment and recovery. He gets reinstated by the NFL in 2018, and his career's gone like this since recovery. Just celebrated 5 years of recovery. But before he got reinstated, he stack shelves in a grocery store called Sprouts. And so on Saturday, the day before week one, he signs his $51 million contract in his grocery store Sprouts t-shirt,
I
to show
love
what's
it.
possible,
I love
and
it.
those, and then I was watching Monday Night Football last year, and it's like during the second quarter of Monday Night Football, there's a lineman on the team, Max Crosby, who's also in recovery. The announcers
That's
had a
right.
6-minute conversation on Monday Night Football about recovery,
I know.
and how much that means to Darren and Max, and the ethos behind that. And so it's really, like, these are the cultural moments that I think are really important. So sorry
That's
about your
exactly
fantasy
right.
football team,
And
but yeah, he's gonna be a beast as a tight end.
I know. And I love seeing him in the film. He's evidently into meditation. And he's evidently
Yeah.
into some holistic practices that you can see from the film, and to see how that supports recovery, and to see how these things supports recovery. So it's pretty
To see a 6'10", 200-pound guy meditating. I mean, it changed your, cultural perception of men and athletes, and all of that. I mean, that's exactly who he is. And yeah, I mean, those are the things. And the same thing with Secretary Walsh and other folks,
yes.
who are using their platforms, using their stories, and that's all allowed. We can do these things. It's
That's
okay,
right.
and maybe we have to,
That's
in
right.
order to help others.
That's right. That's right. Well, thank you again so much.
Thank you.
It delights me that we share the same recovery birthday every year. At least we touch base every year on that one. And it
Yeah,
makes me really, really happy. So I look forward to seeing you. That's next week. So I can't wait.
awesome. Looking forward to it,
Thanks,
Nikki. Thank you.
Greg.
Bye.
Thank you.